Something that I have noticed with photography, especially you see it with deer hunters or hunters in general. Okay, if they've gotten a good catch or a good kill, and they're like, hey, I'm going to celebrate this. Okay, what do? Do you ever see the hunter standing in front of his kill? No. You see the person behind it, holding it closer to the camera, right? So that the rack seems bigger, the length is larger, the size of this animal is bigger. They put it right in front of the camera so that everybody can see how big this is. Well, is it really that big, or is it because of the fact that you've put it right in front of the camera? Okay? Now, I would like you guys to do something for me, okay? I want you to take your hand, hold it up, right or left, it doesn't matter, okay? Now, I want you to put that up, arm's length, and then block it so you can't see me, okay? Now, which thing is bigger? Am I bigger or is your hand bigger? I'm the larger one. But yet you can have your hand there and it blocks your view. Okay? A lot of things can be done just with perspective. Now, I got some pictures off the web from a particular website. I'm going to show these to you this morning. I think that they're rather funny, and they're all about perspective. Now, for those of you watching online, you're not going to be able to see these because I don't have permission to live stream these things out, but I did want to put these pictures up on the screen here. Okay, so amazingzone.com or ezone.com. So this girl here, you know, reaching out and touching a helicopter. But that's a full-size helicopter. It's just a matter of perspective there in the camera angles. Let's go to the next one. Okay? This little girl getting eaten by a dinosaur or chased by a dinosaur, right? Now, you could have a whole group, as we have in the next photo here, all being scared by a dinosaur, but I'm sure this dinosaur is probably only about 6 inches tall, but the perspective makes it different. Okay, next picture. Now, this is a little bit dark, but you can see this is a piece of plywood beside, and there's a crane back there, and the person makes it look like they're holding up whatever it is that crane is lifting, pinching it with their fingers. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Something large, but you can hold it in your hand. It's the sun, pinched between your fingers. Or it could be, like the next one, something very small, like a piece of glitter that you're pinching with, or the lights in the background. Okay, next one. This is my favorite. This girl's holding up the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Okay, all about perspective. It's all about where you focus your attention and how things look in proportion to each other. This morning, we are going to look at the prophet Elijah. Now, last week we looked at Elijah and what he did on Mount Carmel when he confronted the prophets of Baal. Because Israel had been straying after idols, particularly worshiping Baal. And so God set a drought for 3.5 years, brought about by Elijah's prayers. And then Elijah was told to go to King Ahab and say, okay, I'm going to send rain on the land. Meet me on Mount Carmel. They got this showdown. Remember, they had 2 sacrifices, one for Baal, one for Yahweh, Israel's God. And so he's like, okay, we're going to put the sacrifices out there, but we're not going to light any fire. And the God who lights the fire himself, that's the one who's God. And you guys remember what happened. Baal's prophets could not bring about anything. Through all of their efforts all day long, nothing happened. Elijah offers a simple prayer, and boom, fire comes down from heaven, burns up the sacrifice, the rocks, the wood, the water that they had dumped over it, everything. All gone, and everybody's like, Yahweh is God. Yahweh's God. Everybody turns and at least admits, whether they start following, they admit Yahweh is God. Very great high point in Elijah's life. And he said, okay, gather up all of Baal's prophets. We're going to slaughter them. And then he tells Ahab, rain's coming. Head on down. So Elijah prays, and then God sends the rain. And actually, God even enables Elijah to outrun Ahab's chariot down from Mount Carmel back to Jezreel. Okay? Supernatural intervention. Drought, rain, fire, running. God working, God working, God working. Over and over again in the life of Elijah. Mountaintop experience. But oftentimes what happens when we come down off a mountaintop, where do we have to go? Into a valley. And we're going to see Elijah today suffering with what we would call depression. Now, I know that depression is very prevalent in our culture. It has gotten worse since 2020 and the COVID stuff and lockdowns and separation and isolation and all kinds of things. Many of us go through low times. Sometimes they could be diagnosed specifically as depression. Sometimes it even reaches the point where somebody would say, you know what, I don't even want to keep on living anymore. We're going to see Elijah go through all of that today. And I'm hoping that that's going to be an encouragement. If you are feeling low, I hope you're going to be encouraged by Elijah's story. If you know of someone else who is struggling with this, I'm hoping this will equip you to come alongside and to help. And for all of us, there are going to be times when we're going to get depressed, when we are going to be low. This is going to equip all of us for that time, so you know ahead of time to recognize it and how can we deal with it in a godly way so that we are brought back up from that low point. Okay, so that's where we're headed today. Let's turn to 1 Kings chapter 19. 1 Kings chapter 19, and we are going to pick it up now and just going to read verses 1 through 3 for starters. Now Ahab told Jezebel, that's his wife, all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, "So may the gods do to me, and even more, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time." And he was afraid and rose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree and requested that he may die. Okay, now this scenario here, we're going to go through and look at 3 feelings that Elijah has. 3 perspectives that he has that bring about the depression that we're seeing that he's in. Okay, and his depression goes even lower here. We'll see as we go along. But we're going to look at 3 feelings that he has, and then we're going to look at 3 focuses God gives him to bring him out of this depression. Okay, so first of all, these 3 feelings. The first one is fear. The first one is he has fear. He is afraid Jezebel is going to kill him. Interestingly, he went to Ahab, the king. He didn't seem at all afraid of the king. He was afraid of the queen. Okay, she was a nasty, nasty woman. And you see that in other places, other stories about her. She was a terrible, terrible woman. And Elijah was afraid of her. Now, why was Elijah afraid? Okay, the God who sent fire from heaven to roast a sacrifice, can he not send the same thing to roast Jezebel? Why would he be scared? We don't really know. But for whatever reason, his perspective, his focus had changed, where Jezebel seemed a lot larger than what she needed to. And God was either absent from his vision or was a lot smaller than what he should have been. Otherwise, there would have been no reason for him to run. Elijah failed to see a connection between his past with God and his present with Jezebel. And sometimes that's where we are too. For all of us here, we have seen God work in our lives. We have seen him do amazing things, but our memories are really short. And when something is right there in front of our face, a threat, as it is with Jezebel, some other problem or challenge, and then we fail to see that, you know what? God's big. God is bigger than this. Just like I had you do with your hand earlier, okay? Something's in front of our face, and we forget who God is. Is God bigger than our problem? Absolutely. But the problem is right here. What we need to do is we need to get that problem out of the way and focus on God. He focused on the problem, and he failed to see the connection between his present problem and his past with God and realize God's bigger than this. So his fear is one thing that led him to that, okay? Now, the second feeling, though, catches up with him while he's catching his breath from running away. So let's pick this up in verse 4. I'm going to start in the second half of it, okay? He requested for himself that he might die, and he said, "It's enough now, O Lord. Take my life, for I am no better than my father's." He lay down and slept under a juniper tree, and behold, there was an angel touching him. And he said to him, "Arise, eat." And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a bread cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you." So he arose and ate and drank and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. So here, his second feeling is failure. Okay, his first one was fear. His second one is failure. And you saw it here. God, I'm no better than my fathers. Okay, now we don't know if he's talking about specifically his ancestors or if he's talking about maybe the other prophets that have come before him. But Baal worship is still going on. You know, it hasn't been purged from Israel. There's still a problem here. I failed. He gets his focus off of God and he gets it on himself. And he says, I'm a failure. Have you ever failed yourself? Have you ever failed God, failed other people? I didn't follow through on a commitment that I made. I haven't achieved what I set out to do. I've become bankrupt. I've lost my, you can fill in the blank with whatever it is that you've lost. Feel like a failure. Now, when it says that he was running, we don't know the geography really well, most of us, of Israel and what it is. Okay, so Mount Carmel, if you remember, Israel was divided into two sections. There was the southern kingdom of Judah and the northern kingdom of Israel. This is in the northern kingdom of Israel on Mount Carmel, okay, where he was. So he runs from there to Jezreel. He gets threatened, and then he goes all the way down to Beersheba. Okay, that's out of the northern kingdom of Israel, through the southern kingdom of Judah, to the very tip of it. Okay, this would be like us saying, okay, I'm going down to like the Mexico border, all the way. He exits the country and goes even farther, another day's journey into the wilderness. Now, for us to get some perspective here, this would be like you running from here to Nashville, Tennessee, not Little Nashville. If you can imagine there's a threat to your life, you're traveling probably on foot. I mean, he could have had an animal, but he's probably going on foot. From here to Nashville, Tennessee, the whole time looking over your shoulder, wondering if somebody's going to catch up with you to kill you. Probably a 6-day journey minimum for him. Maybe if he was running, it might have been shorter than that. A whole week's worth of stress, worry, physical output. He is at a very, very low point. And he feels, I've failed. Why does he feel that he failed? I mean, he just had this mountaintop experience. We're not really sure. But sometimes, for whatever reason, things get too big in our perspective, and we fail to take in the larger picture. He was first afraid to lose his life with Jezebel, and now he's afraid to live his life. God, I don't want to keep on. I've had a chance to walk with a friend through a time of deep depression. You know, loss of job, loss of marriage, loss of health, boom, 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 all at the same time. And this person has shared with me, it's like, you know, I just don't want to keep living in the pain anymore. This is just too hard. It's overwhelming. I don't want to do it anymore. And so here he's not suicidal, but here he is saying, it's like, I'm not going to take my life. You do it for me, God. I'm done. I'm checking out. Depression, in a time of deep depression, the world often gets very small and we become very self-focused on our feelings because we get overwhelmed by them. Okay? But he also gets overwhelmed by something else. And this is by unfairness. The unfairness of it all. He's got a fairness problem. God, this isn't good. Okay, so it says that he journeyed 40 days and 40 nights and after eating that food, and he goes to Horeb, the mountain of God. This is Mount Sinai, okay, where the 10 Commandments were given. So this is where he goes. And then look at the interaction between him and God when he gets there. Okay, we're going to pick it up in verse 9. Then Elijah came there to a cave and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He said, "I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. And for the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, killed your prophets with a sword. I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away." And he said, this is God speaking to him, "Go forth and stand on the mountain before the Lord." And behold, the Lord, Yahweh, was passing by. And a great strong wind was rending the mountains and breaking in pieces the rocks before Yahweh, but Yahweh was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but Yahweh was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but Yahweh was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Then he said, "I've been very zealous for Yahweh, the God of hosts, and for the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, killed your prophets with a sword. I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away. I've served you, God. This isn't fair. I've done what you said, and look what they're doing. It isn't fair. This is not right." If you've felt like Elijah, pay attention now to how God helps him. He comes to him, first of all, when he first arrives, and after all these experiences, he comes to him gently. He comes very gently. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And this is the thing that stood out to me the most as I was preparing the message and studying this text this week, is this question. And I think this is a good question for each of us to ask ourselves. what are you doing here? And by here, I don't mean physically here, okay? Look at your heart. How are you thinking? How are you feeling? What is your perspective? Are you down, depressed, discouraged, anxious? Is there a lot of tension wound up inside of you? The question that God would have us to ask, I think, right now, or to ask us is, what are you doing here? Why are you in the state that you are right now? And he gives him a chance to vent. Pour out your heart, Elijah. And so what does he do? He pours out his heart. But as he pours out his heart, it betrays where he's at. He says, I've been very zealous. Yes, he has. Okay, Israel has torn down the altars. Yeah. Israel has, they've killed your prophets. Now, hold on a second. They have? Who killed the prophets? Jezebel did. Not they. It's not all Israel. Jezebel did. He's getting his perspective a little askew. I'm the only one left. No, he's not. If you read back in the previous two chapters, chapter 17 and chapter 18, I think, there's a guy named Obadiah who is one of the servants of the king, and he took and hid 50 prophets in a couple of caves or divided them up. He hid 100 prophets and fed them, gave them water, made sure that they were safe. There's at least 100 other prophets left, and Elijah had already been told this. But in the midst of his depression, he's forgetting the facts. He's getting his perspective skewed. He's not the only one left. And they're trying to kill me. No, Jezebel's trying to kill you, not they. It's not that everybody is against you. There's one person against you. Elijah's perspective got all off. So God comes to him gently and speaks to him. But then he not only comes gently and speaks, God also reveals another aspect of his character. Okay? Go out, stand at the mouth of the cave. Fire, earthquake, and wind. Incredible. Wind so strong that it's breaking the rocks. This is incredible experience. And if you remember, what did the people experience at Mount Sinai when they came and God gave them the 10 Commandments? It was like a volcano. There was rumbling, noise, fire, smoke, lightning, I believe. All of that was happening. So he's getting to experience the awesome presence of God. The same God that just enabled him to run ahead of a chariot, run faster than the horses. The same God that sent fire down from heaven, the same God that had kept rain from coming for 3.5 years, the same God who had sent a storm when Elijah had prayed. And God says, what are you doing here? Boom! All this power is displayed. And Elijah seems to miss it. Because he says again, what are you doing here, Elijah? And then Elijah has the exact same complaint. All this revelation of God's power didn't fix Elijah's depression. It didn't grant him the right perspective. What does God need to do to get our attention? Well, I want to show you 3 things that he does, okay? And all of these are designed as an outgrowth of one thing. The one cure for his depression is a change of focus. He needs a change of perspective. You got your eyes on the wrong things here, Elijah. You're not able to see, so get your eyes on me, and then I'll show you what you're missing. So if you are struggling with depression, what do we need to do? Turn your eyes on him. And then he, by looking at it from his perspective, it's going to show you things are a little different than what you understood. He's going to give you his perspective on it, okay? And that's what we're going to see in the last verses here that we're going to read for this morning, verses 15 to 18. Okay, the Lord, Yahweh, said to him, verse 15, go return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael king over Aram, and Jehu, the son of Nimshi, you shall anoint as king over Israel, and Elisha, the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah, you shall anoint as prophet in your place. It shall come about, the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael, Jehu shall put to death, and the one who escapes from the sword of Jehu, Elisha shall put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So, we need to pay attention to where we put our attention. Is your attention on God, or is your attention on your circumstances? Is your attention on yourself? Okay? Pay attention to where you put your attention. God is strong enough and he cares enough. That's what we saw on the mountain there. He cared enough to engage Elijah where he was, and he reminded, I'm strong enough to fix these problems. Okay? So remember those things. If as we get to these last 3 points here, I want to give you a little way of illustrating this. Okay? If you are having vision problems, okay, and I just saw somebody shoot somebody else a look here, so I know somebody's having vision problems here. If you're having problems with your eyes, okay, you could try and fix it on your own. Okay? You could continue to squint at things, blow things up bigger, whatever. But the one thing you can do is get to the eye doctor. And if you get to the eye doctor, they can give you the corrective lenses, prescribe the LASIK surgery, whatever it is, that will fix your eyes so that you don't have to continue doing those other things. Okay? The one solution, it's not for you to figure, well, I got to do this different, this different, this different. The solution is get yourself to the eye doctor, let them do one thing, and it will make everything else different. Get yourself to God. He will fix your perspective, your focus, your eyes, so that you can see things from his perspective, okay? So, the first we saw in verses 15 and 16, and that's the idea of finish. All right? Finish. You are not as done as you think. Elijah prayed, God, take my life. I'm no good. I'm done. I'm clocking out. And God says, no, you're not. You're not as done as you think you are. You have a job to finish. There is a mission that is still to be accomplished. Because what God calls us to is not a race where we cross the finish line necessarily at the very end. He is calling you to a relay race where you have a leg of that race you complete and then you hand off the baton to somebody else. And he's saying, you've got 3 other people here that I'm calling you to pass the baton to who are going to complete the work that you have started. Just because the job isn't done doesn't mean that you have failed. God is at work in your families. I know that you have shared with me some of the people that are on your heart. You know, Dan, who's on your heart. Some of you have kids or grandkids that are straying from the Lord. You know, they're off into all kinds of things that are bad and difficult. You be faithful. Complete the task that God has called you to, and trust he's going to bring other people into their lives to do it as well. You are not alone in this. God is working, okay? So if you are still breathing, you've got a job to do. If you want to know whether God's done with you or not, take 2 fingers and put them up here. If you got a pulse, you got a job. Keep working for the Lord. Do not give up. You're not as done as you think you are. Okay, second is the facts. That was in verse 17 where he talked about the kings and the prophet and what they would do, about how they would execute God's judgment. It's not as bad as you think. It's not as bad as you think. This job is still going to get accomplished because it's God's job. So he's going to bring along these other people who are going to do it. Okay? So remember the facts. It's not as bad as you think. And third is the idea of friends. You're not as alone as you think you are. You're not alone in this. I'm the only one left, God. They're trying to kill me. They're going to snuff it all out. I've reserved 7,000 people, God says. You just don't see them. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not real. Elijah, get your eyes on me. I'll give you my perspective. I see 7,000 faithful people when you saw 1. You've got friends. You're not alone in this. We've got to remember that. Elijah needed his perspective corrected. Do you need your perspective corrected? When we are low, when we are depressed, it doesn't mean that just because we get our eyes on God that all of our situation is going to change. You know, was Jezebel still wanting to kill him? Yep. That hadn't changed. Were there still idol worshipers in Israel at this point? Yep. But what did God do? Elijah had started up north, he ran south, and then he kept going. Long way. And God said, I want you to go back to the wilderness of Damascus. Where was that? Back up here. I want you to go back up north, get back in the saddle, get back on the job. And God was going to work in a different way. He wasn't necessarily going to work through these, sending down the fire and through this drought. He was going to work through political leaders, through religious leadership that God was calling forth, and Elijah had a role to do in calling them. It's kind of a change in how God was going to work. God may not work in the way that you've seen him work before, but you can trust him to work. Turn your eyes on him. So as we have this closing song, I want to encourage you to get your eyes where they need to be. Whatever your situation right now, God sees it as well. And chances are, there's a lot of things that he sees that you don't. There's different facts that you don't understand. There's also friends that you have, allies that you may have and are forgetting, or that God's going to call alongside you. You're not alone in that. Get your focus up on him. So as we have this closing song, this is a time to turn your eyes on him. Let everything else fade away. If you need someone to pray with you,